Hi. Official recaps here.
Once upon a time, a little boy named Jack lived with his father. The boy enjoyed reading the tale of the giants, which his mother used to tell him before she died. The story is as follows: a long time ago, the monks found magic beans which they hoped would grow a pathway to God. Unfortunately, when they came up the stalk, they found something else standing between heaven and earth. The place was Gantua, the home of the fierce giants. The giants came down to earth, stealing and pillaging the human race, but also acquiring a taste for human flesh. The same story is quite enjoyed by Isabel as well, the little princess. After reading it to her, her mother asks if she's afraid of the giants' two-headed leader. The mother continues even though the girl says no. In an attempt to subjugate the giants, the monks had turned back to the dark arts. Their hearts melted and they created a crown. With the crown in his hands, King Eric sent the giants back to Gantua, where they were imprisoned. When he cut off the stalk, his land was once again at peace. The legend was born out of the fact that the king was buried with artifacts from that era. Jack inquires about the return of the giants as his father tucks him into bed. He warns him they will be killed by the guardians of the king, who are descended from noble blood. He is informed by his father that the giants are a myth. Isabel's mother informs her that, in a sense, King Eric was real. She is descended from him. Her mother discovers that her daughter has been wandering the castle when she claims to have seen his grave in the catacombs. She's not angry, though, because if she ever becomes queen and has the ability to improve the world, she wants her to learn about it all. Jack keeps reading the story, which predicts that the giants will return to fight the earth after his father leaves his room and slaughter all of Eric's relatives. 10 years later, Jack's uncle tells him not to get sidetracked as he sends him to sell the horse in the city. Now that he is an adult, Jack goes to town and tries to sell his cart and horse. The town theater diverts his attention right away. The tale of King Eric and the giants is recounted by them. A stunning girl in the audience catches Jack's attention and realizes that he is staring at her. Jack chooses to intervene when 3 men start harassing the girl before the play ends and follow her outside. After taking a punch to the face, he begs the men to release the girl. Abruptly, a regal protector materializes behind him. To Jack's surprise, the men kneel when they see Princess Isabel get on one of the horses and apologize to the guardian because they don't want any trouble. The guardian motions for him to kneel as well as he turns around. He discovers that his cart has been stolen outside the theater. Meanwhile, Roderick and Wick talk about his future marriage with the princess. They encounter and let go of a monk. Roderick rushes to see if the relics are in their proper place as soon as they enter the room housing them. Even though the magic beans have been taken, King Eric's crown is still there. He gives Wick the order to locate the monk and shut the city's gates. When Jack appears to be selling his horse, the monk knows they are looking for him. If the monk had the money on him, Jack would gladly accept his offer of 10 coppers for the horse. The monk offers him the beans as collateral as a result. Unimpressed, Jack informs him that they are holy relics, which he can exchange for the money he was promised by going back to the abbey. He is instructed by the monk not to misplace or spill the beans. The monk has already accepted the horse and is heading out of town while Jack is still thinking about the offer. Wick sends his men after him before he can get away. They pursue him and seize him. Later, Isabel returns to the castle and apologizes to her guardian, Elmont, for making his work so difficult. Jack is receiving criticism from his uncle at the same time for trading the horse for the beans. He informs him that, at 18, he needs to mature. Because the princess is going to be the future queen, the king chastises her for leaving the palace without the guardians at the same time. She asks why he would ask her to marry someone twice her age and who she doesn't love, like Roderick. Isabel asserts to her father that she is not a weak and defenseless being, to which he responds by comparing her to her mother. Jack's uncle spills the beans, stating he will have to sell Jack's parents' remaining belongings because he is furious. Even though he begs him not to do that, the man refuses to give up. Isabel begs her father to grant her freedom to wander the kingdom, but he refuses, saying he would rather lose her than her mother. She presents her case to the king, but he has the last say and decrees that she will wed Roderick and remain in the palace. Disappointed, Isabel departs, but she defies her father once more that evening. Wick and Roderick are questioning the monk at the same time. He claims that because the beans were created using dark magic, they ought to have remained buried. The beans can't be controlled. Roderick kills him. Jack worries later that his uncle is out in the storm. Simultaneously, the princess gets lost and decides to follow the lights on Jack's house. The princess knocks on Jack's door as he is about to leave to go find his uncle. As they converse, the water beneath the house rises and approaches a magic bean. He extends an invitation for her to come inside. Jack and Isabel discuss reading and travel. Pretending not to recognize each other, he tells her that he got into a fight at the market in the princess's honor. Jack queries her about the reason behind her flight. Jack indicates that he knows who she is by kneeling when she says she's just looking for adventure. After telling him to stand, Isabel expresses gratitude for his support of her honor. Two of them are still unaware that the bean is starting to sprout beneath the house. Giving her his favorite book about the giants, he wishes her luck in finding what she's searching for. Abruptly, the house starts to tremble, and a massive stem shoots up into the sky, ripping the floors apart. Isabel is imprisoned inside the farmhouse while Jack is flung outside. Jack leaps to it when the rising beanstalk picks it up in order to assist Isabel. When Jack eventually returns to the house and attempts to enter, the elevation of the house keeps rising. When Isabel opens the door, she almost shoves him aside. He grabs her hand, but still falls down the beanstalk, taking her mother's bracelet with him. Jack manages to arrive safely back down at the foot of the stalk, but passes out. The following morning, the king wakes him up and asks him why he has his daughter's bracelet. Elmont recognizes Jack from the market, and he is given permission to explain what transpired. Both him and Roderick will help the Guardians find and rescue Isabel. Subsequently, the men are climbing the stalk. Clearly, Roderick is planning something. Elmont tells Jack what he believes is up there, but the Guardian rejects the existence of giants. He advises the boy not to try to impress the princess because, even if she chooses not to wed Roderick, she will never be able to wed a commoner such as himself. Jack is assisted by the other Guardian, Craw, to cross the stalk, but he tragically trips and falls. They continue to climb the enormous beanstalk after saving him, losing people along the way at Roderick's request and without Elmont's knowledge. There are just 6 of them left. When they wake up the following morning, they find they have climbed to the top of the beanstalk. They venture into the world of the giants in search of the princess because she isn't in Jack's home. Roderick stops Jack and threatens him for the remaining magic beans as the Guardians start their chase. After giving them the purse, he receives a threat to remain silent. One of the beans is kept by Jack and placed in his locket. Elmont and Craw discover a hint that indicates Isabel departed in order to return. Following Isabel's marks, Craw and the others follow, but all of a sudden Jack discovers the book he gave her, telling the others that she must have hidden there. When they come across some broken branches, Jack assumes that she must be in trouble because something large must have dragged her out of hiding. Elmont gives the men the order to divide into 2 groups. He, Craw, and Jack come upon some sheep and attempt to trap one by setting off a trap. Elmont hears something coming and starts cutting them off. Once outside, they take cover from a giant that is moving toward them. After devouring a sheep whole, it finds Craw and captures his sentinel. The man bolts, but the giant is only a few leaps ahead of him. Elmont approaches Craw as it's about to be eaten and stabs him, only to be knocked unconscious in the process. They are both seized by the giant and carried off. Jack adheres to it. As the other group reaches a waterfall, Roderick is instructed to sit and take a break by the Guardian while he searches for an alternate route. They push him off the cliff after tricking him. Wick is suddenly seized by a giant who devours him. Roderick arrives at the crown in time to save himself from the appearance of another. Jack entered one of their cities after trailing the giant. The giant is holding Isabel captive at the same time and interrogating her about how she got there. She refuses to respond. She responds that she is alone when it asks if there are other people pursuing her. However, General Fallon, the 2-headed giant, is aware that Isabel is descended from King Eric. Telling his men that the humans have come back, he shows her around. Abruptly, Craw and Elmont are also brought there by the other giant. The giant's leader interrogates the 2 of them, and when Craw irritates him, it devours him. Jack follows the chaos to the enormous metropolis, but not before he must run for his life from 2 giants. When Roderick unexpectedly appears wearing the crown, the general challenges Elmont, threatening to eat Isabel if he doesn't answer his questions and quarrels with another giant about who has the right to do so. Even the general bows down to the giants. When he arrives, Elmont is pleased, but Roderick merely ascends to the throne. To the surprise of both himself and Isabel, Roderick commands the giants to fight as his army and conquer the earth in his stead as their king. At dawn, he orders them to get ready for battle. General Fallon finds that objectionable. Jack discovers the room containing all the treasure the giants have taken in the interim. Then looks out over the city and hears Isabel pleading with the people taking her away for her life. Elmont and her are getting ready to be devoured. As the enormous cook searches for something, Jack shows up to save them. When he is unable to free Isabel, he approaches Elmont and hands him a knife. After returning and nearly killing Elmont with a giant pick, the giant places him in the oven. Before he gets cooked, Jack climbs over to get him, while he lets himself out of the dough. As the giant is about to sever Isabel from her cage, Jack grabs one of the cooking knives and stabs him in the stomach. Elmont lets go, Isabel runs away, and Jack hangs onto the giant's back. It effectively completes the task when it strikes itself in the wall. Jack informs them that he knows a way out after impressing Elmont with his ability to kill a giant. In the meantime, the king asks one of his generals at the base of the stalk whether they ought to chop down the beanstalk. The man claims that the stalk is a way to both get up and get down. They make assumptions about what might happen next. Roderick tells one of the giants to wait for the others at the edge while they return to Gantua. Elmont bemoans his friend's passing while Jack tends to Isabel's wound. She regrets leaving and starting this because of it. But if she hadn't, Roderick would have abruptly taken control of the kingdom, Jack informs her. He tells her that they need to get her back so that when she becomes the queen, she could make the world a better place. When her bleeding stops, Elmont asks to go where. The giant is sleeping when they follow the river to its edge. Jack believes they ought to use a beehive to help rouse him up. The two men run back to hide after approaching the sleeping giant and hiding the hive inside his mask. After a brief period of waiting, the giant awakens, trips over himself, and eventually plummets off the precipice. Jack and Isabel embrace, but Elmont is not fond of it. Elmont informs them as they approach the edge that he must stay behind to look after Roderick. He assigns Jack the role of guardian and orders him to bring the princess home. After saying their goodbyes, Isabel and him head out. The giant collapses at the base of the stalk. When the king notices him, he gives his general the order to chop down the beanstalk for the good of the kingdom. The princess hasn't arrived yet, so the king takes his sword and approaches to cut it while pleading with his daughter for forgiveness. The general is hesitant. The general gives his men the order to cut the stalk after observing the king's determination. At the same time, Jack and Isabel descend the stalk and discover their city at its base. The real work of pulling down the beanstalk has begun. Meanwhile at Gantua, Elmont waits for Roderick at the edge. The massive army that is approaching wakes him up. When Roderick gets there and approaches the edge, Elmont attacks him out of the blue, causing him to spill the remaining beans. They struggle after falling into the cave at the entrance. General Fallon orders his men to dig Roderick out when he asks the giants for assistance. When Elmont tries to seize Roderick's sword and inflict injuries on him, Roderick wins the battle. However, Elmont grabs his knife and stabs Roderick after he is nearly pushed off the edge once more by Roderick. The giants succeed in creating a hole in the stone, but they are unable to reach Roderick before he passes away. They are successful in capturing the throne, though. General Fallon dons it like a ring and ascends to the position of Giant King. The men are back at the base of the stalk, having cut off a portion of it. Higher up, Isabel and Jack feel it start to shake and tear apart. The men beneath the stalk start to feel the weight of its sheer mass. Isabel is told to hold on by Jack. General Fallon watches as Elmont leaps to the top of the stalk before it totally collapses. Jack utilizes one of the stalk's stems as a rope to swing away from it as he and Isabel ride it. Elmont's stalk continues until it nearly reaches the palace, at which point it partially collapses, allowing him to leap off as well. The king believes he has lost his daughter, which makes him feel terrible. His general appears out of nowhere and carries her over to him. When Isabel tells him about Roderick, he apologizes. When Isabel inquires about Jack after he leaves, the king pursues him. Saying he can't do enough for Jack as a father, he gives him a reward. As they say their goodbyes, he gives Isabel the book to remember him by when she emerges wearing armor. Her father takes her on a ride to the palace. General Fallon discovers the remaining magic beans at the same moment. When he tosses them into the water, they begin to sprout right away. The beans are just starting to grow on the very edge of their land, so General Fallon gets his men ready. The stalks are not even fully formed when the giants start to climb and push them down. General Fallon also hops on board. When Jack discovers his horse on Earth and witnesses the giants descending, he mounts his horse to alert the monarch. A short while later, the giants show up. As Jack approaches the king and Isabel to inform them of the giants, they notice the giants behind him. The giants catch up and kill the king's men as everyone rushes back toward the city. General Fallon pursues the king, but the first beanstalk slows them down. Elmont prepares the army in the city, preparing everything from the hot oil to the archers. Elmont is waiting for the giants to enter the city so they can light the oil, and they are right on Jack's tail. Before Jack can cross the drawbridge, the king arrives in the city and raises it. He jumps on, but so does General Fallon. Elmont pushes him off the bridge and he burns in the oil. The other giants prepare to get into the city, but Fallon survives under the water. Elmont reunites with Jack and Isabel. He tells the king that the giants have the crown and they suddenly throw a bell into the city, then latch onto the drawbridge with hooks. The king tells Isabel to go to his chambers and light a beacon to warn the other kingdoms. He tells Jack to look after her. Elmont and the rest manage to hold the drawbridge. Isabel leads Jack through a shortcut via the royal catacombs and they pass King Eric's grave. They get to the royal chamber when they hear something under the floor. General Fallon pushes through it and they run. The army keeps trying to hold the giants off, but they just keep decimating their ranks. They launch fiery threes at the city. The giants simply fight back and destroy their weapons as the humans fire spears at them in an attempt to finally gain the upper hand in the battle. As the princess and Jack hide in the king's robe, Fallon can smell them. When he discovers them, they flee up a narrow staircase. In an attempt to reach them, Fallon breaches a wall, seizes Isabel, and then seizes Jack when he tries to kill him. The giant pulls out the last magic bean and spits it into his mouth just as he is ready to devour Jack whole. He dies and the palace is destroyed as the bean starts to sprout in his stomach and emerges from him. His hand holding the crown falls beside Jack as fragments of the giant fall all around him and Isabel. The humans close the city's doors while the remaining giants lower the drawbridge once more. The men prepare for the giants' arrival and watch for their breakthrough. The giants drop their weapons and kneel in front of the human army as they suddenly witness the Beanstalk tearing apart the palace. When Jack, donning the crown, emerges, Isabel grasps his hand. Many years later, Jack is telling his kids the story's conclusion, in which the princess marries her farm boy prince and the giants are forced to return to their homeland. Concerned that the giants will return, the children inquire about the crown. He assures them that it is in a safe place as Isabel joins them. Jack tells them the story of the giants again, as the reconstruction of the crown is seen, becoming what the imperial state crown looks like today. The crown is seen in present day, as a guide tells some students about it. The safe place in which it is held is in Westminster Abbey in London.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.